My parents threw me out for my pregnant sister on my 18th birthday, but karma struck back spectacularly at her wedding. Allow me to illustrate the dynamics of my family for you. My name is Deborah, and I was born into a family who publicly called me their midlife mistake. My dad, Michael, 65 million, is a middle management who never challenges my mom, Karen, 63, who is a career-obsessed corporate juggernaut. Then there is my sister, Jennifer, 32F, who has never given a damn about me and is 14 years older than me. I was an unwanted surprise when I entered this world. When mom found out she was pregnant at age 45, she initially assumed it was menopause. She desired an alternative answer, but by the time she met a doctor, it was too late. My arrival wasn't the consequence of a loving parental decision, based on what I've pieced together from overheard discussions and family whispers. I spent more time in the hospital than at home because I was born prematurely and had multiple health problems. Mom never paid much attention, constantly saying she had meetings that were too important to miss. Dad and my Aunt Rachel alternated in keeping an eye on me. Aunt Rachel has become the family's saint. Rachel was there, speaking encouragement through the incubator while my mother was probably closing deals. "You're going to be just fine, little one. You're stronger than you know." I still think about those words when things get hard. Upon my eventual release from the hospital, my grandfather George took over once more. After determining that our home was insufficient for 2 children, he purchased a brand new 5-bedroom mansion with an enormous backyard in one of Boston's greatest neighborhoods. However, the emotional gap in that home could not be filled by any amount of wealth. The immaculate white carpeting, high-end furnishings, and carefully chosen artwork made growing up there feel like living in a museum. I knew right away that I wasn't a part of the display and was an unwanted artifact. When I was 5 years old, I have one of my best memories. On this Take Your Child to Work Day, my classmates were all thrilled to go to their parents' places of employment. Mom gave me a look that made me feel foolish when I asked if I could go with her. "Don't be ridiculous, Deborah," she yelled. I chose to spend the day with Aunt Rachel at her comfortable painting studio instead, saying, "I have important meetings all day. You'd just be in the way. Besides, the office isn't a place for children." She gave me permission to paint, displayed my creations on her walls, and gave me a sense of importance. My haven was school. In an effort to avoid returning home, I threw myself into my studies and joined as many clubs as I could. "Such a quiet, well-behaved child," my teachers would say, praising me. They had no idea that I was afraid of being a burden at home, which is why I behaved well. Even during her brief holiday visits, Jennifer's lack of interest was evident, even though she was already enrolled in college when I entered elementary school. During the holidays, she would come in and tell me about her wonderful college experience, without mentioning me other than to gripe about how her old room had turned into my messy kid space. Grandpa George did his best to make up for my parents' lack of interest. Every few months, Dad would travel from Canada to visit, always bringing thoughtful presents like art supplies, books he knew I would enjoy, and other items that demonstrated his genuine interest in me. However, his presence was insufficient to address the underlying dysfunction in our family dynamic. In essence, Mom's approach to parenting was to spend money on issues and hope they would go away. Lessons in dance? Yes. Tutoring in private? In any case, attending my performance or parent-teacher conferences in person? Sorry, important meeting, can't reschedule. I received the same apathetic reaction for every accomplishment I made. "That's nice, dear." Dad wasn't much better. "Now please be quiet, I'm on a call." It turned out that his promise to Mom that he would assist her with me if she chose to have me was a hoax. He was never too tired, or too busy, to hang out with me. I once tallied how many times he used his favorite phrase, "Not now, Deborah," in a single weekend, 17 times. I can still recall my 10th birthday. Naturally, Mom and Dad forgot. Without even asking what I would desire, they hurriedly ordered a pricey cake and threw money at me when Aunt Rachel reminded them. Jennifer never gave a call. The only actual celebration took place the next day at Rachel's house, when she set up a small gathering with homemade cake and decorations that she knew I would adore. I became increasingly aware of the truth of my circumstances as I grew older. I pieced together the facts from bits and pieces of drunken confessions and whispered disputes that I shouldn't have overheard. When I was 12, I overheard my parents arguing about me one evening. Mom, who was likely drinking her 3rd glass of wine, said, "She's just so demanding. Needing something, always wanting attention." I did not sign up for this. "How do you want me to handle this?" Dad retorted. "We can't really give her back." I began spending much more time at Aunt Rachel's after that. Her modest yet comfortable home became my actual residence. She would listen to my issues, help me with my homework, and teach me how to cook. All of the duties that parents are expected to perform. On the weekends, we would work on creative projects, bake cookies, or simply chat about life. She would inquire about my aspirations, anxieties, and future goals, things that my own parents never bothered to find out about. As the years passed, the gap between my life at home and my time with Rachel grew more pronounced. I was Debbie at Rachel's, loved, respected, and heard. I was Deborah at my parents' house, the misfit, the trouble, the unwelcome one. I discovered how to exist in these parallel universes, flipping between them like a television channel. Naturally, Grandpa George noticed. In order to guarantee that I would have assets of my own when I turned 18, Dad began making direct deposits into a private account on my behalf. With a knowing expression, he would say, "Just in case." I didn't realize at the time how prophetic those comments would turn out to be. The world can be unpredictable. It's interesting how life can throw you a curveball when you least expect it. When my parents dropped a bombshell on me, I was 18, counting down the days until I could leave for college, and struggling to get by each day in the emotional wasteland that was my home. "Deborah," Mom continued in a very upbeat tone, "we have amazing news. Jennifer, your sister, is pregnant and getting married. We're going to be grandparents," Dad added with a foolish smile. Wondering why they were telling me this as though I should be ecstatic, I forced a smile. "That's fantastic," I said. Mom went on, "We're going to be very busy preparing for the wedding," oblivious to my lack of excitement. Their eyes flitted to my bedroom door, and then all of a sudden everything fell into place. "Jennifer and her husband will need space for the baby when they move in with us after the wedding." It all made sense. The measuring tape I had seen in my room, the whispered discussions I had been overhearing, and their strange interest in my college aspirations. They were preparing for my departure as well as Jennifer's return. I realized that the upcoming weeks would be a game changer as I stood there and saw their faces light up at the thought of their real family getting together. I had no idea how drastically those changes would occur or how karma would soon make a big appearance in our family's drama. Update 1: How my parents officially erased me on my 18th birthday. Allow me to explain how my parents formally removed me from their lives on my 18th birthday. Aunt Rachel prepared her customary birthday pancakes and gave me the most considerate presents, including books, art tools, and a lovely handcrafted photo album of our times together. I spent the morning with her. Grandpa George was the true surprise. I initially assumed he was just being protective as usual, but now that I think about it, it seems like he knew something was coming. He had sent me the newest smartphone along with a letter that read, "Keep it handy and document anything important." When I got home to join in the celebration, he also requested me to participate in a live video call. I was unaware that I was going to document the proof that would make all the difference. I started the live video with Grandpa at noon and went home while talking to Aunt Rachel about my morning. Something didn't feel right when I opened the front door. There was an odd fragrance of fresh paint in the air, and the house was eerily quiet. My pulse began to race as I ascended the stairs to my room. Something was clearly off. I always left my door open, but now it was closed. I nearly dropped my phone in horror when I turned the handle. My room was no longer my own. After being covered in my photographs and artwork, the walls were recently painted a gentle shade of blue. An ornate white crib had taken the place of my bed. Teddy bears were all over the place, and where my desk had been, there was a rocking chair. To fit the nautical theme, even the curtains had been changed. I heard footsteps behind me at that moment. My parents were shocked to discover me filming as they came out of their bedroom. "Deborah," Mom said sternly. "Why are you in this place? Why are you taping too?" I was still processing the whole deletion of my existence, so I hardly paid attention to what she was saying. "My room. What happened to it? Where are all my belongings?" Dad nervously cleared his throat. "You see, Deborah, we've made the decision to give your sister's child this room. Because it has the most natural light, it's ideal for a nursery, and our first grandson deserves the best," he said. With a beaming passion that I had never seen directed at me, Mom interrupted, saying, "Jennifer is expecting a boy, the son your father has always desired." It seemed as though someone had punched me in the stomach. "However, where should I sleep? Where are my belongings?" With a dismissive gesture toward the stairs, Dad remarked, "Oh, we packed up your stuff. The garage is where the boxes are. When you depart, you ought to bring them along." "Go," my voice broke. "Leave, what do you mean? I call this place home." Mom's phony grin wavered. "Deborah, you must comprehend, dear. There just isn't room for you here anymore, especially with Jennifer and her husband moving in and the baby on the way. Furthermore, you should learn how to support yourself now that you are 18. What I was hearing was unbelievable. "No," I murmured, my voice wavering. No, I won't go. I also call this place home. You can't just ignore me like I don't exist. Mom finally lost her temper and said, "For heaven's sake, Deborah. Avoid being tough. This is about family, not about you." "I am a member of your family." Tears were flowing down my face as I yelled. "I am your daughter. My birthday is today, and you're throwing me out. Did you not even realize it was my birthday?" Dad rolled his eyes. "Is it your birthday? Is it the purpose of this outburst? We have no time for such nonsense." Their indifference struck me like a blow to the body. Mom looked anxiously at my phone, which was still filming everything, while I was crying. "Stop causing a commotion," she growled. "The neighbors will listen." "Well done," I fired back. "Give them permission. Make it clear to everyone your true character." Dad's fingers dug cruelly into my arm at that moment. He snarled, "That's enough," and pulled me to the stairs. "Leave right away and don't return." After a last shove, I was on the front porch with my stuff in hurriedly packed boxes. With a finality that reverberated in my bones, the door slammed behind me. I'm not sure how long I sat there crying, but Grandpa George's voice finally broke through my tears. "Are you there, Deborah, my love? I witnessed everything. Don't worry, we'll resolve this. For now, go to Rachel's, shall we? And be careful with the video." Having witnessed the entire event via Grandpa's shared live broadcast, Aunt Rachel was already waiting at her door when I got there. For the first time that day, I felt secure as she drew me into a strong embrace. Rachel insisted that my birthday be celebrated. She ordered my favorite meal, invited some of my closest friends over, and made every effort to make the day memorable. We all understood, however, that this was about more than just a botched birthday celebration. It was about my whole existence being completely upended. Grandpa George sent me an email that night when I was lying in bed in Rachel's guest room, which she started referring to as my room right away. He had a strategy, and his lawyer had saved and certified the live stream footage. He wrote, "The wedding is in 3 days. Be prepared. Karma occasionally requires a little assistance to get going." I didn't realize at the time how correct he was, or how spectacularly karma was about to hit. Update 2, Jennifer's wedding is the target of karma. Aunt Rachel demanded that we go to Jennifer's wedding even though we weren't invited. She helped me into a gorgeous blue frock she had purchased for the event and remarked, "We have every right to be there." Besides, we were specifically invited by Grandpa George. As soon as we walked into the reception area, I saw Grandpa. I felt uneasy since he was sitting at a table close to the front, looking sharp in his pricey suit. His exact plans were kept a secret from me, as he wanted to be prepared for some justice. As my parents had imagined, the ceremony itself was picture perfect. In her expensive gown, Jennifer looked stunning, and her new husband appeared to be a kind guy, although a little overwhelmed by the extravagance. Throughout the ceremony, Mom and Dad looked like the ideal family they had always envisioned, beaming with delight. As my parents worked the room throughout the reception, boasting about their expecting grandson and pregnant daughter, I observed from a corner table. They presumably hoped we wouldn't cause a commotion by deliberately placing us at the farthest table. If only they were aware of the impending danger. Grandpa George abruptly rose up during the celebratory supper as the congratulatory remarks got underway. The astonished best man handed over the microphone to him as he marched to the front of the room. There was silence in the room. He opened with the serene authority that only comes with age and wealth. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to disturb this happy occasion, but there is a serious injustice that must be addressed. I have never seen a takedown as deliciously vicious as the one that followed." Grandpa meticulously described every aspect, from my parents' early denial of my existence to their recent eviction on my birthday. On the projection screen in the reception area, he presented a few selected segments from the live feed, allowing everyone to see their actual hues in high definition. He roared, "These people threw their own daughter out like garbage on her 18th birthday to make room for their new grandson. Keep an eye on this." The film showed Dad's physical aggressiveness and Mom's contemptuous cruelty. The guests' faces shifted from bewilderment to surprise to indignation. In fact, a few of Mom's best friends stood up and left. As she watched, Jennifer's mascara trickled down her cheeks, making her new spouse appear more uneasy. Grandpa wasn't done when Mom, her face flushed, tried to intervene. His voice was as frigid as ice when he turned to face my parents. "Let me state this unequivocally, I am altering my will. I will give Rachel and Deborah every money I have. Jennifer, Karen, and Michael, you're all totally disconnected. The investment accounts, the trust monies, everything, disappeared." The outcome was instantaneous chaos. Mom cried out in a choked voice, Jennifer wept about the future of her unborn child as Dad's face became a frightening shade of purple. The biggest surprise, though, was when a number of Dad's business associates got up and walked away, pointing out their business cards to Grandpa as they went. As you can see, my parents were unaware, or had conveniently forgotten, that Grandpa was not only rich but also a significant investor in a number of businesses, including the one where Dad worked and many of Mom's most important clients. Grandpa had a significant impact on both their business and social networks. Mom's well-cultivated social circle started apologizing and departing as we watched. Suddenly, Dad's coworkers were unable to look him in the eye. Jennifer's in-laws appeared to be having a heated argument while gathered in a corner. When Jennifer's new husband got up and declared he needed some air, it was the last straw. He still hasn't returned. He is reportedly speaking with divorce attorneys because he doesn't want to be associated with a family that has such a well-publicized problem. The best thing, though, is this. Do you recall the business cards that people were giving to Grandpa? As it happens, a number of Dad's colleagues had been searching for fresh investment prospects. By the end of the evening, Mom's clientele was beginning to appear extremely slender, and Dad's business had lost 3 significant investors. Grandpa smiled at me contentedly as we walked out of the celebration. Letting people ruin themselves is sometimes the best kind of retaliation, my love. All I did was make sure their audience was appropriate. Since then, my parents have been bombarding my phone with frantic messages about understanding, forgiveness, and family. They even attempted to break into Rachel's house yesterday when they arrived. I made the decision that enough was enough at that point. After glancing at Rachel, I made the choice that would alter everything. I want you to be my legal guardian, I replied. Our lawyer claimed it was almost a slam dunk with the video proof we had, and the paperwork was already underway. The reputation of Mom and Dad was in ruins. Their financial future appeared bleak, and they had been abandoned by their social group. At the time, Jennifer was residing with our parents. Her idyllic life was falling apart around her, and she was being shut out by her husband's family. As they say, karma is a wonderful thing. Tomorrow, I'm going to file for a restraining order. It should be an easy win because of the video proof of Dad's physical assault and their emotional abuse. If we wish to pursue a civil complaint, our attorney thinks we have sufficient funds for one as well. Grandpa George wasn't joking when he said that karma needed a little assistance occasionally, but it was worth every tear I ever shed because of my parents to see their meticulously maintained facade fall apart. Third update. I'm finally prepared to discuss how the wedding went, even though the effect has been utterly devastating. Karma did more than simply strike back. It composed a symphony of justice that would make any fan of vengeance cry with delight. Let's begin with the court case. Only 2 weeks after the disastrous wedding, the court hearing for Rachel's guardianship and my restraining order was set. My parents appeared in their most favored role, that of loving, worried parents who only wanted their daughter back. They had even engaged a public relations consultant to assist them develop their image, giving them advice on how to come out as contrite. The sight in the courtroom was unreal. In contrast to her typical power suits, Mom dressed her best concerned mother attire, complete with natural makeup and modest jewelry. In fact, Dad had a new haircut and, of all things, a Bible with him. They had even brought in character witnesses, mainly well-off friends, who were prepared to attest to their commitment as parents. They weren't ready for what we had though. In addition to the birthday video, our lawyer provided years' worth of financial documents that demonstrated how they had misappropriated the assistance funds that Grandpa had been sending for my upbringing. As it turned out, they had been transferring the majority of it, more than $200,000, to their personal investment accounts and Jennifer's trust fund. I will never forget the judge's expression as the footage was being played again. She even halted the proceedings to inquire if I wanted to file criminal charges when it reached the point when Dad physically pulled me out. I refused. It was enough torture to watch their world fall apart. She was adamant, nonetheless, about sending the case to the district attorney's office for examination. For my parents, the judge's decision was terrible. In addition to being given full guardianship, they were mandated to reimburse Rachel for all of the money that had been embezzled from her support, plus interest. They must keep at least 500 feet away from Rachel and myself, according to the restraining order that was granted. However, that was only the start of their demise. Do you recall the wedding's business contacts? They were rushing, not simply walking away. After a number of investors left, Dad's company carried out an internal audit, which revealed several dubious choices he had made. He was relegated to a role with little actual authority or client contact, but he wasn't dismissed outright. Interns now share a cubicle with the man who once held the corner office. Even more spectacularly, Mom's career collapsed. Her once advantageous reputation as a brutal businesswoman was now viewed differently. Clients canceled contracts citing ethical concerns when the video of her ruthlessly evicting her own daughter went viral in local business circles. She now reports to someone who was once her junior associate after her corner office was moved to a cubicle 3 floors down. The social repercussions were just as disastrous. Following a particularly contentious board meeting where the video was aired, their membership in the country club was cancelled. To get away from them, old friends crossed the street. Their names inexplicably disappeared off the donor wall when their church requested that they take a break from committee work. In little than a month, the meticulously crafted social standing they had spent decades cultivating fell apart. Things haven't gotten much better for Jennifer. 2 weeks after the wedding, her husband filed for divorce, citing fraudulent misrepresentation of family character. She continues to live with our parents, using department store maternity clothes in place of her fashionable pregnancy outfit. My former room, the nursery they so brutally evicted me for, is now empty and underused, while her ideal suburban dream has degraded into sharing her old adolescent bedroom with her expectant child. The impact on finances has been enormous. Grandpa George wasn't threatening the will in a meaningless way. He essentially moved the majority of his assets out of my parents' grasp by having his attorneys create an irrevocable trust for Rachel and me. They have now received eviction papers from the house they reside in, which is officially held by one of Grandpa's businesses. While the investigation into the stolen support monies is ongoing, their investment portfolio has been placed on hold. They made every effort to turn things around, including offering treatment, making heartfelt apologies, and even trying to buy Rachel's neighbors to spy on us. They sent their lawyer to negotiate last week, seemingly ready to forgive me if I could persuade Grandpa to restore their inheritance. It was almost impressive how bold they were. For my part, things has taken a surprisingly positive turn. In what is now officially my permanent residence, Rachel and I share a home. We've painted my room in my favorite colors, hung my artwork, and made it genuinely so it's no longer just a guest room. Rachel even assisted me in creating a fairy light-equipped reading nook near the window. I feel like I have a true home for the first time in my life. Grandpa George established a substantial college fund, and I've received acceptance offers for the next autumn semester from multiple universities. I'm going to study psychology with a focus on family trauma therapy because, well, I might as well apply my life experience. I've already begun assisting other teenagers from toxic homes deal with their circumstances by working at a nearby youth shelter. The amount of support I've received has been tremendous. It seems that many people in similar circumstances found resonance in my narrative. I've started a blog to chronicle my healing process, joined support groups, and gained new friends that can relate to what I've been through. The texts I get every day from people going through similar things give me hope that all of this suffering can lead to something positive. Yesterday, my parents' most recent attempt to get in touch was a formal letter from their lawyer threatening to sue me for defamation if I don't take back my false accusations. Our lawyer actually chuckled when he read it, but he also reminded them that we have everything on video and that the truth is an absolute defense against defamation. As I reflect on the last 3 months, I've come to the essential realization that sometimes the family you were born into isn't the one you were intended to be with. I learned what unconditional, encouraging, and respectful family love looks like from Rachel and Grandpa George. They have only ever asked for my pleasure and well-being in exchange. To everyone who helped me along the way, you have no idea how much your messages, counsel, and experiences have aided me. The Reddit community turned out to be a surprising wellspring of knowledge and courage. You showed me that standing up for myself wasn't selfish and that I wasn't wrong to ask my parents to have basic human decency. There is hope for people who are still stuck in unhealthy familial environments. Create a support system, keep track of everything, and never forget that you deserve better. Being related by blood does not give someone the right to mistreat you. Those who don't love you well don't define your value. I've legally changed my identity, I have a real home, and I can finally control my future when I start college in the fall. Karma rolls hard, but occasionally it needs a little prodding. I'm sure my folks are reading this, so I hope it was worthwhile. You lost the daughter you never cared to adore as well as everything else because of your ideal family image. Reddit, I appreciate you sharing in my path to liberation.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
My wife won $9 million, filed for divorce, and kicked me out, but she forgot the prenup her parents forced me to sign before marriage. My wife won a $9 million lottery, filed for divorce, and kicked me out, but she forgot about the prenup that her parents compelled me to sign before our marriage. I am from a humble family. My parents live in a quiet suburb, and I grew up in a little 3-bedroom house that always smelled like fresh laundry and homemade food. After high school, I worked a variety of odd jobs, including bartending, helping at my uncle's hardware store, and eventually managing a local sporting goods store. It was not glamorous, but it was genuine. My wife, on the other hand, came from a world that I had never known. Her parents owned several properties, drove expensive automobiles, and threw enormous, extravagant parties a few times every year. Let's name my father-in-law Phil, and my mother-in-law Maëlle. Maëlle was a tall, imposing figure who exudes quiet power in every setting. He'd make casual comments that seemed more like disguised threats or manipulations. Maëlle was also good at gently expressing disapproval. Just one raised eyebrow could make others shrink. They were never blatantly nasty in front of me, but I could always sense their displeasure behind the polite talk. After my wife and I got engaged, I learned how much her parents feared that outsiders would take their family assets. They treated me like an intruder, despite the fact that my wife and I had been dating for years. Before we could set a wedding date, Phil insisted that I sign a prenuptial agreement. I didn't have the money to fight it legally, and I was too consumed by love. I kept telling myself it was a symbolic gesture to placate her parents. Isn't love the only promise I needed? The day I signed is very clear in my mind. It was a warm afternoon in her parents' huge house. Mel spread down the document and slipped a pen in my direction. He gave me coffee, almost as if it were a regular business transaction. My wife stood to the side and said little. That hurt, but I dismissed it, assuming it wouldn't matter in the long term. The contract stated that any gifts, inheritances, or trust funds from her family remained her own property. However, any big item we acquired together, such as a house or lottery winnings, would be marital property. That seemed unusual to me, but all I wanted was to marry her. 6 months later, we married in a beautiful lakeside wedding. My parents were overwhelmed by the luxury yet remained supportive. My father's expression was tense as he greeted my in-laws. He'd always taught me to trust my instincts, but I assumed love would remove any doubts. The first several years passed without any noteworthy incidents. We resided in a condominium that her parents helped us get. I made monthly payments on the mortgage, despite the fact that the down payment came from her father's gift. Looking back, it was never actually a gift, but rather a tool for controlling us. But back then, I assumed that this was how wealthy families operated. Our marriage had the normal money squabbles and occasional outbursts about our parents interfering with our decisions. They'd arrive unexpectedly, bring new furniture or decor, and occasionally reorganize our entire living space without notice. My wife would dismiss my frustration, blaming it on her parents' supportive nature. Then came the day that everything flipped upside down. My wife called me, ecstatic, to tell me she had won a $9 million lottery prize with a random ticket she purchased at a petrol station. At first, I was overjoyed, fantasizing about quitting our jobs and exploring the world, but my excitement gradually faded. She insisted we keep it a secret, even from my parents. She got strangely paranoid, talking about claiming the money correctly and meeting with lawyers I'd never met before. When I asked to attend these meetings, she told me I'd be out of place, which stung. I had no idea the main surprise was about to occur. One afternoon, I returned home from work fatigued to discover her searching through drawers with her aunt. She casually announced that she was filing for divorce and instructed me to pack my bags and leave the apartment, which she claimed was under her name. I was floored. Sure, I paid monthly mortgage payments, but she clearly thought her father's original down payment and her newfound wealth rendered me useless. I felt my heart break. I contacted my father, my voice cracking, and told him I had just been booted out of my own home. It was the ultimate treachery. The biggest shock came next. I learned that my father-in-law had sent his personal attorney to protect her. They wanted me out so they could keep the lotto earnings separate from me. Except they'd forgotten the provisions of the prenuptial agreement they'd forced on me. Instead of completely protecting their daughter, it declared that any windfall obtained during marriage counted as a shared asset. I then understood that if they insisted on divorce me immediately after winning the jackpot, they might not be able to keep anything. I decided to go cautiously. My father advised me to remain calm, hire a lawyer outside their social circle, and prepare for a nasty struggle. I was determined not to fold. They'd thrown down the gauntlet, treating me like a disposable annoyance. If they believed I'd walk away peacefully, they were greatly mistaken. I spent a few nights at my folks' house, attempting to process the shock. My mother was furious, shouting about how rude my in-laws had been from the beginning. My father, while also outraged, remained pragmatic. He contacted an old buddy, a family law attorney, and scheduled an appointment for me first thing in the morning. Sitting in that attorney's office, I felt a mixture of rage and relief. I told him about how my in-laws insisted on the prenup, how my wife had earned $9 million, and how she then surprised me with divorce. He chuckled as he reviewed the prenuptial agreement. They shot themselves in the foot, he told me. They specifically included language that lumps lottery winnings under marital assets. Unless a judge does some wild legal interpretation, you're entitled to a substantial portion. This was a lifeline for me. I was scared the prenup would keep me out, but it turned out that their fear of me claiming inherited wealth outweighed the potential of a jackpot scenario. My lawyer cautioned that it would not be simple. My in-laws were wealthy, well-connected, and likely to deploy a large legal team, but he believed we had a good case, especially given I had contributed financially to the marriage and had been unceremoniously evicted from our shared residence. I inquired about the divorce proceedings in our state. A disputed divorce can last months or longer, but if my wife's side realizes they are on shaky ground, they may seek an early settlement. The lawyer warned that they would use intimidation or underhanded tactics to persuade me to give away my rights cheaply. Within a few days, my father-in-law left me a frightening message, asking me to back off since I deserved nothing from his daughter. He claimed that if I sought to collect the lottery prizes, he would ensure that I received nothing. My lawyer just instructed me to document everything. Then, my mother-in-law cornered me outside my parents' house, suggesting a pathetic, silent exit. She portrayed it as a fantastic bargain, but it wasn't even enough to cover half of my mortgage payments. I declined, stating we'd see each other in court. She scoffed, perplexed by my refusal, obviously unaccustomed to anyone refusing her money. With negotiations at a deadlock, my lawyer filed petitions to prevent the lottery monies from being hidden or moved. That incensed my in-laws, who began spreading rumors about me being a gold digger who preyed on their young daughter. It stung, but I remained strong. My supervisor, who owned the sports goods store, had my back, dismissing my father-in-law's attempts to interfere with my employment. Friends took sides, some calling me petty, while others praised me for fighting back. The stress was unbearable, but I refused to succumb. We finally got a court date after several weeks of unsuccessful negotiations. My wife was not to be found. Personally, she was practically under her parents' protective wing, avoiding any direct communication with me. She let her lawyers do the talking, alleging I was a leech who gave nothing to the marriage. My lawyer objected, citing financial records, bill time sharing, and a specific prenuptial clause regarding windfalls. We also discussed how I had been violently kicked out of the condo. The judge directed both parties to prepare for a more formal hearing on asset partition. In one final attempt at intimidation, my father-in-law threatened my employer again, who swiftly instructed him to leave. That simply made my father-in-law angrier. My lawyer advised us to proceed carefully, but he was certain that a judge would see through their scare tactics. Nothing could have prepared me for the ultimate fight in court, but I knew the law was on my side, paradoxically, because to the very prenup they'd imposed on me. Weeks passed, and the anticipation for the approaching hearing reached fever pitch. My wife still avoided direct contact with me, but her lawyers inundated me with motions. They maintained that the lottery gain was separate property because she purchased the ticket, despite the fact that the prenup stated that any large windfall during marriage was marital. Meanwhile, my father-in-law attempted to ruin my reputation among friends and business acquaintances by spreading the myth that I was a gold digger who had married into the family purely for money. During this time, I had a combination of frustration and motivation. If they thought they could bully me out of my rights, they were mistaken. I had records that demonstrated how I contributed to our shared existence, such as electricity bills, groceries, and half mortgage payments. My attorney and I went over every element of the prenup. He highlighted a significant clause stating that any pecuniary windfalls, including but not limited to lottery or game show winners, are deemed marital assets unless expressly stated differently. It was as if my in-laws had accidentally left a back door open. A week before the hearing, we held a preliminary status conference. My wife arrived with her parents and a team of lawyers, 4 attorneys and a financial advisor. They looked at me with the same air of superiority, but their attitude softened when my lawyer quietly showed the prenuptial agreement, emphasizing the specific clause about lottery money. The judge listened attentively, appeared unimpressed by their attempts to dismiss the case, and ordered that all substantial assets be frozen until the main hearing. That same day, my mother-in-law cornered me outside the courthouse, insisting we speak like adults. She tried to provide a flat payment that was much lower than before, calling it generous for someone of my background. I refused again, telling her that we'd let the judge decide. She snapped that I was destroying the family, as if I had surprised her daughter with a divorce. The hypocrisy made my blood boil, but I remained calm. My lawyer had told me not to engage in heated confrontations that could be used against me later. Behind the scenes, I was terrified that my in-laws might try to hide the lottery earnings in hidden accounts. My lawyer, anticipating this possibility, filed court orders to block any substantial transfers. We also planned to have a forensic accountant ready in case we suspected them of hiding monies. My father-in-law's temper flared. He left me a voicemail calling me filthy and accusing me of taking the love from his daughter's life. It was lavish, given that they were the ones who kicked me out immediately after winning the lottery. As the hearing neared, I meticulously planned with my counsel. We practiced my statement to ensure I seemed calm and factual in court. I had papers of the prenup, receipts for the partially paid mortgage, and even texts from my wife confirming our joint bills. The lawyer advised me to make my replies succinct, but the evidence will speak for itself. If they attempted emotional theatrics, we would respond with precise documentation. On the morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the courthouse, my heart racing. My parents attended me for moral support, but they remained outside the courtroom. When the proceedings began, I noticed my wife seated near her father, both sporting stone-cold looks. Her mother lingered in the back, arms folded. My father-in-law's lawyers, dressed in glossy suits, were confident, maybe hoping that money and legal strength could overcome the facts. The judge, a severe woman in her 50s, didn't waste time. She invited each side to submit their arguments. My wife's main attorney attempted to portray me as a small contributor who had done little more than share the same living environment. They claimed the lottery purchase was a personal transaction made using her money. But my lawyer calmly reminded me that the prenup specifically includes such windfalls as marital property. We also have bank records indicating she had used our joint account card that day. When we presented the information, I noticed visible tension in my father-in-law's camp. The judge inquired whether they had any more paperwork indicating it was her personal money. They fumbled, claiming that the card had been used unintentionally or that it was her father's deposit into the account. But the statements clearly identified our names, not just hers. The judge took note, her attention going to them with anticipation. Eventually, my wife spoke. She said she never intended to upset me, and that her parents pushed for a divorce once the prize was won to protect family assets. She fumbled over her words, acknowledging she was under pressure but also attempting to excuse it by claiming that if anyone found out about the money, they would come after us. My lawyer inquired whether she consulted me before making these judgments. She admitted number. The judge's disdain was evident. By midday, it was evident that their prenuptial agreement was a double-edged sword. The exact document they'd used to isolate their money now threatened to put a large sum of lottery prizes in my hands. The court ordered a second hearing for final judgments, noting that she preferred to approach the lottery as a significant marital asset subject to equitable division. Outside, my father-in-law went by me, mumbling, "This is far from over," but his confidence was clearly shaken. Their desperation grew in the weeks before the ultimate verdict. My father-in-law's lawyers tried everything, submitting motions to revise the prenuptial agreement's terms, arguing the goal was not to include lottery winnings. The judge dismissed the motions, citing the plain text. My mother-in-law tried to corner me again, warning me that if I hurt their family, I would regret it. I told her straight up that they'd started this by pushing me out and surprising me with a divorce. My wife attempted to contact me, leaving an emotional voicemail expressing her desire for things to end amicably. She offered that if we just had a secret agreement, we might be able to recover some of our relationship. I would have considered it if they had treated me fairly from the beginning, but after the intimidation, falsehoods, and forced removal, my trust had evaporated. My lawyer warned me not to engage in these back-channel discussions. We had a strong legal position and no reason to settle for crumbs. Finally, the day for the final hearing arrived. The courtroom was filled with attorneys from both sides. My father, mother, and a few friends arrived to support me, sitting silently at the back. The judge took the bench, reviewed the amended documents, and approved final remarks. My father-in-law's lead lawyer took one final shot, portraying me as a crafty opportunist who uncovered the prenup's loophole after benefiting from the family's generosity. My lawyer responded with plain facts. 1. They compelled me to sign the prenuptial agreement. 2. It specifically mentioned the lottery or other windfall as shared property. 3. My father-in-law financed a portion of our condo, but I contributed monthly, so it was not a completely independent asset. Furthermore, the quick divorce petition following the prize was typical evidence of their plan to keep me from the rewards. The judge listened intently and then issued her decision. She stated that the lottery wins definitely fell under marital assets under the prenup's terms. She chastised my in-laws for attempting to pervert the agreement they had drafted. She also determined that my wife's abrupt expulsion of me from the condo was unfair, and that I was entitled to repayment for my share of the mortgage and marital contributions. In brief, the judge issued an order stating that I would receive a significant portion of the lottery winnings, as well as compensation for my condo part. We parted ways, with a finalization date set for a few weeks later just to complete papers. My father-in-law's expression was thunderous, and my mother-in-law was incensed, whispering fiercely to him. My wife stood there with tears in her eyes, either from genuine remorse or fury over the loss of so much money. I felt both vindication and grief. We used to love one another, but greed, parental influence, and their attempts to exploit me destroyed everything. In the aftermath, their lawyers attempted to provide a slightly changed settlement, most likely expecting I'd accept a lower figure to avoid more complications. My lawyer urged that we accept the judge's decision as is. We had no reason to cut it. The only concession I made was to give up any stake in the condominium. I never wanted to step foot in that place again. They cut me a check for an amazing amount. Was that half the jackpot? Not quite, but it was large enough to allow me to reconstruct my life comfortably. Throughout it all, I concluded that my in-laws, in their hubris, assumed that wealth would protect them from consequences. They did not expect me to fight back effectively. Ironically, the prenuptial agreement they insisted on became the tool that secured my part of the winnings. If there was ever poetic justice, this was it. My wife, as far as I know, is still under her parents' care. She's lost face in her social circle as a result of the chaos that ensued. Some common acquaintances have informed me she is grappling with guilt, but I doubt she would ever openly recognize her family's role in planning this. As a token of appreciation for their support, I used a portion of the settlement to assist my parents in upgrading their home. Another chunk was invested, and while the entire experience left me scarred, changing my perspective on trust, marriage, and money, I find comfort in knowing I remained firm. I refused to be bullied into taking table scraps. Although it was brutally painful, the end result felt like a victory over oppression. Now, free of my in-laws' deceptive grip, I'm moving on. I've returned to a simpler existence, which is oddly reminiscent of my pre-marriage days, but I'm stronger, wiser, and far from the naive man they thought they could steamroll. If they remember anything about me, it should be that they unintentionally provided me with the legal tool I needed to avoid going bankrupt. They launched the war, I completed it, and that concludes this chapter.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.
My jealous sister accused me of being a gold digger and tried to ruin my boyfriend's career. My parents took her side as always. Hello, everyone. I don't know where to start. I suppose I've always been the other sister. My name is Lindsay, and I'm 29 years old. I grew up in the shadow of my older sister, Melanie, who is now 34. It feels like my entire life has been spent trying to measure up to her, but I never could, at least not in my parents' eyes. Melanie has always been the golden child. I recall as a child seeing how easily everything appeared to fall into place for her. She was the star of every school play, the captain of her soccer team, and the straight-A student who my parents couldn't stop talking about. Meanwhile, I was simply Lindsay, the quiet one. The girl who enjoyed drawing in her sketchbook but did not shine in the ways that mattered to them. It wasn't as if I hadn't tried. I put myself into art because it was the one thing I thought I was good at. But even that wasn't enough. I recall one particular day well. During a parent-teacher conference, my middle school art instructor informed my mother that I had true talent and that if I worked hard enough, I might be able to receive a college scholarship. I felt very proud and excited. But when we arrived home, my mother replied, "That's nice, honey, but it's not like art is a real career. Melanie's already studying for the SATs. Maybe focus on something practical." This shattered me. I was 12. I did not wish to be practical. I wanted them to be proud of me, even if it was for reasons other than Melanie. But the favoritism did not end there. My parents gave Melanie every possible benefit. They paid for her piano lessons, individual tutoring, and pricey summer camps, which she didn't appear to like. When it came to me, however, the funding was tight, or so they claimed. I asked for painting lessons, even cheap ones at the community center, but they always answered, "No, we just can't afford it right now, Lindsay." They did, however, manage to finance a new car for Melanie when she reached 16. Regarding that car, here's a story that still makes my blood boil. On my 16th birthday, I convinced myself that this was finally my time. If Melanie gets a car, maybe they'll surprise me with one as well. Instead, I received a sweater. A sweater. I'm not ungrateful. I understand not every child gets a car. But what about the kicker? Melanie arrived home from college with a flat tire. And guess who got to wait and watch my father spend hours mending it while my birthday cake lay untouched on the counter? Happy birthday to me. And it's not simply the material aspects that sting, it's the emotional neglect. My mother constantly praised Melanie, saying things like, "You're so beautiful, you're so smart, and you're going to do amazing things." I can't remember the last time she said that to me. I was ecstatic to get my first job at a tiny graphic design agency. But my mother's response was, "That's nice, but when are you going back to school?" You know, Melanie got her master's degree. I tried talking to my father about it once. He's quieter than my mother and more passive. I asked him why it seemed like they loved Melanie more than me. He groaned, looked uneasy, and continued. "We don't love her more, Lindsay? She just needs us more." What the heck does that even mean? Is she in more need of them? She had everything handed to her. If anyone required assistance, it was me. As I became older, the gap between us widened. Melanie went on to greater and better things: an Ivy League degree, a high-paying job in finance, and a sparkling engagement ring from her equally beautiful fiancé. And me, I felt stuck. My art career didn't take off as I had hoped. And every time I saw my folks, they'd say, "So, what's next?" As if what I'd done so far wasn't enough. One of the most humiliating experiences occurred last Thanksgiving. Melanie and her fiancé, Jason, came over for supper, and my parents went all out: prime rib, fine wine, the works. I brought a pumpkin pie that I had made myself, which I was very proud of considering I am not much of a cook. When I placed it on the table, my mother gave me a tight little smile and said, "Oh sweetie, that's nice, but Melanie brought a cheesecake from that bakery downtown. Everyone loves their desserts." Guess which one was devoured first? Melanie not only receives all of the adulation, but she also appears to ignore it. She pretends not to notice the partiality, but I believe she enjoys being the center of attention. Years ago, I tried to confront her about it. I told her it was unfair that Mom and Dad treated us differently. She stared at me with wide-eyed innocence and said, "Lindsay, you're being ridiculous. Mom and Dad love us equally." Then she turned around and uploaded a picture on Instagram with the remark, "My parents are the best," over a shot of the new watch they bought her just because. I feel as if I've been gaslit my entire life. Every time I try to express my feelings, I am met with either denial or sympathy. "You're overreacting, Lindsay," or, "Oh, you poor thing," as if I were a frail little flower incapable of handling her feelings. It is exhausting. I've been growing increasingly distant from my family. I stopped coming to family gatherings and called my mother solely to learn about Melanie's recent successes. I've been focusing on my painting again, attempting to rekindle the passion I had as a child before their relentless comparison drained everything from me. But it's hard. No matter how much I try to remove myself, that voice in the back of my head continually screams, "You'll never be good enough." I guess what I'm wondering is, am I crazy for feeling this way? Is it inappropriate to want my parents to see me for who I am, rather than who I am not? Or am I doomed to live the rest of my life in Melanie's shadow? After years of feeling stuck, I eventually discovered what I considered to be a nice place. I'd been working as a freelance graphic designer, gradually developing a portfolio that I was proud of. It wasn't a glamorous job, but I adored it. For once, I felt in charge of my life, free from incessant comparisons to Melanie. That's when I met Zach. It was a random meeting at a small business exhibition that I attended to network. I was standing awkwardly near a kiosk, browsing through leaflets, when he approached me. He was tall, with dark hair that had just the proper amount of gray at the temples, and he exuded effortless confidence, which I noticed straight away. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he replied, smirking. I laughed, slightly ashamed. "Is it that obvious?" He presented himself as Zach, the founder of a modest but thriving technology startup that creates software for small businesses. As we talked, I discovered that he was 36, self-employed, and had created his business from the ground up. Zach, unlike many of the folks I'd met at these occasions, was neither pretentious or overbearing. When I explained about my business, he listened and asked questions about my design process and the types of clients I dealt with. It felt refreshing. We kept in touch for a few weeks. Zach was more than just nice and charming. He was intelligent, ambitious, and truly interested in what I had to say. He asked me to create some branding materials for his company, and working with him was fantastic. He treated me as an equal, which was unusual for me after being dominated by Melanie for so long. When Zach and I started dating, it felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I felt recognized, not as Melanie's sister or the less successful daughter, but as Lindsay. He wasn't concerned about my family dynamics or the baggage I carried. He cared for me. Of course, Melanie had to spoil it. At first, my parents appeared cautiously enthusiastic about Zach. They loved his success, though my mother couldn't help but make snarky remarks like, "Well, he's a bit older, isn't he?" Or, "I hope he's serious about you." Melanie, on the other hand, despised him from the start. I should have seen it coming. Melanie delights on being the center of attention, the one everyone envies. Zach's accomplishments made her feel threatened. She couldn't believe I'd found someone who was not only nice and helpful, but also extremely accomplished in his own right. So, in classic Melanie flair, she sought to instigate drama. It began quietly. Melanie mentioned during a family meal how handy it was that I met Zach while working on a project for him. "So, did you land the guy and the client?" she joked, loud enough for everyone to hear. I attempted to shrug it off, but the inference was clear. She assumed I was just dating Zach for his money. Things swiftly escalated after that. Melanie began spreading tales throughout our family, claiming that Zach was some type of sugar daddy. She even told my parents that I was exploiting him to escape my dismal career. "I just think Lindsay's rushing into things," she'd say, pretending to worry. "It's not like she's ever dated someone like Zach before. You have to admit, it's a big step up." What is the worst part? My parents believed her. My mother confronted me one night after dinner. "Lindsay," she asked, her tone concerned, "are you sure Zach is the right man for you? He's so established. I just don't want you to get hurt if this doesn't work out." "What are you talking about?" I demanded. "Zach and I are happy. Why can't you just let me have this?" Mom hesitated. "It's just..." Melanie mentioned some things. "Of course, she did," I added. "Because Melanie can't stand it when the attention isn't on her." I stormed out that night, but the damage had already been done. The seeds of mistrust had been sowed, and no matter how much I defended myself, it seemed as if my family had already made up their minds. The rumors did not end with my family. Melanie began sharing them around mutual friends. People I hadn't spoken with in years. One day, I received a phone call from Sarah, an old high school classmate I hadn't spoken with in years. "Hey, Lindsay," she said nervously. "I just wanted to check in. I heard some things about Zach and wanted to make sure you're okay." "Wait, what things?" I inquired, puzzled. Sarah hesitated. "Well, Melanie mentioned that Zach might be, controlling. She said you've been spending all your time with him and barely talking to your family anymore. I just wanted to make sure everything's all right." I was infuriated. "Sarah, that's not true. Zach is nothing like that. Melanie's just..." I paused, recognizing there was no use in explanation. Melanie had already caused harm. When I challenged her about it, she claimed to be the victim. "I was just worried about you," she explained, wide-eyed and innocent. "I didn't mean for it to get blown out of proportion. You know how people love to gossip." "You're the one who started the gossip," I yelled. "Why can't you just be happy for me for once?" Melanie didn't care. She never does. All she cared about was bringing me down and keeping me in the shadow, where she believed I belonged. Throughout it all, Zach was my rock. "Lindsay," he remarked one night as we sat on his couch, "you don't owe anyone an explanation for our relationship. Not your parents, not Melanie, not anyone. The people who really care about you will see the truth." He could see how much it was hurting me and did everything he could to encourage me. I wanted to believe him, but it was difficult. Melanie's falsehoods made me feel increasingly lonely. Even some of my closest friends became distant, as if they didn't know what to think. It seemed like I was waging a lost battle, while Melanie was winning. But Zach was correct in one thing. Those who genuinely cared about me stood by my side. My best friend Emily was among them. When she heard what Melanie was saying, she quickly called me. "Lindsay, this is ridiculous," she said. "Anyone who knows you knows you're not that kind of person. Melanie's just jealous. She can't stand that you're happy." Hearing those words meant more to me than I could convey. For the first time in weeks, I felt less alone. Zach, for his part, refused to be swayed by the reports. If anything, they only strengthened us. He saw through Melanie's tactics and refused to allow her harm our relationship. "She can say whatever she wants," he told me. "At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is us." He was correct. Melanie could spread as many stories as she wanted, but she couldn't take away what Zach and I had created together. For the first time in my life, I wasn't simply Lindsay, the other sister. I was Lindsay, the woman who had found love and happiness despite everything Melanie had thrown at her. I used to believe that things couldn't get worse following Melanie's initial rumors about Zach. I was mistaken. Melanie wasn't simply out to ruin my family's opinion of me. She launched her campaign on social media, dragging my name through the mud for all to see. It began softly, as many of Melanie's shenanigans did. She shared a photo of herself and her husband Jason, in front of their huge suburban home. The headline read, "It's amazing what you can achieve with hard work and dedication. Some of us don't need shortcuts." I realized it was about me. The timing was absolutely great. Zach and I had just shared photos from a weekend trip to Napa Valley, which Melanie would have undoubtedly seen. I attempted to ignore her posts, but they got more pointed. A few days later, another photo showed her holding an expensive handbag with the message, "Bought this with my own money, because, some of us don't rely on others to fund our lifestyles." The worst one, however, was a photo of her standing in her garden with a smug smile, holding a coffee cup that read "Girl Boss." The caption, "It's amazing how some people will do anything for a free life." Her friends and acquaintances chimed in, some even tagging me directly in their replies. I was upset, but I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her publicly in order to defend myself, but Zach urged me otherwise. "She's baiting you," he remarked. "If you respond, you're giving her exactly what she wants." He was correct, of course, but that didn't make things any easier. Every time I opened my social media, there it was. Her smug expression, passive-aggressive captions, an army of accomplices. It felt like she was waging war against me, and I didn't even have a weapon to defend myself. A few weeks later, things escalated during a family meal. My parents had invited everyone over for what they called a relaxing evening. I should have known better. Nothing about being in the same room with Melanie could possibly be relaxing. Melanie was on edge from the time Zach and I stepped in. She welcomed us with a phony smile and an overly bright, "Oh, hi, you too." But her tone was tinged with sarcasm. She hardly acknowledged Zach, instead concentrating her entire attention on Jason, making a huge deal of questioning him about his career, their forthcoming vacation, and his plans to remodel their already exquisite kitchen. Dinner began uneventfully enough. My mother had prepared one of her hallmark dishes, roast chicken with all the fixings, and the discussion was primarily small talk. However, Melanie, ever the limelight seeker, felt it was time to stir the pot. She leaned back in her chair, whirling her wine glass like a villain from a soap opera, and said, "It's funny. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and she mentioned how some people are living the dream of all money hunters." The table became silent. My father coughed awkwardly. My mother gave Melanie a warning glance, but she disregarded it. "I mean," she continued, her gaze riveted on mine. "Imagine finding someone who's willing to pay for everything. Your vacations, your lifestyle, even your career. Must be nice, right?" Zach stiffened alongside me. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, but I wouldn't let her see me crack. "Are you trying to say something, Melanie?" I inquired, keeping my voice as quiet as I could. "Oh no, of course not," she responded innocently. "I'm just making an observation. Some people have all the luck." "Luck has nothing to do with it," Zach interrupted, his voice low but forceful. "Lindsay works hard, and she doesn't need to rely on anyone to support her." Melanie smirked. "Oh, I'm sure she does. I mean, graphic design is such a stable and lucrative career path. I'm sure you don't help out at all, right?" "Enough." My mother's voice sliced through the tension like a dagger. "Melanie, stop it, this isn't appropriate." But Melanie wasn't done. She slammed her glass down with a bit too much vigor, the sound reverberating around the room. "I'm just being honest, Mom. Isn't that what we're supposed to do as a family? Be honest with each other?" I could not handle it anymore. I sprang up so rapidly that my chair almost crashed over. "Honesty? You wouldn't know honesty if it hit you in the face. All you know how to do is tear people down because you can't stand it when the spotlight isn't on you." "Lindsay, don't," Zach murmured calmly, placing his hand on my arm. But I was beyond the point of caring. "Do you know what your problem is, Melanie?" I asked, my voice quivering with wrath. "You can't stand the fact that someone else might actually be happy for once. You thrive on making other people feel small because that's the only way you can feel big." Melanie's face flushed hot, but she did not answer. My father said something about everyone needing to calm down, but I didn't want to hear his half-hearted attempts at mediation. I grabbed my coat and turned to face Zach. "Let's go." We went without saying anything, the tension in the room so heavy that I felt like I was suffocating on it. I burst into tears as soon as we arrived at the car. "I can't do this anymore," I wept. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine when she's destroying my life." Zach drew me into his arms, his words calming. "You don't have to. You don't owe her or anyone else in your family anything. You've worked hard for what you have, and you don't need to justify it to anyone, least of all Melanie." He was correct, of course, but as much as I wanted to wipe Melanie out of my life entirely, I knew it wouldn't be that easy. She was more than just my sister. She was my parents' darling, the golden child. Cutting her out would also mean cutting them out, which I wasn't sure I was prepared for. The next few days were a jumble of emotions: rage, despair, and frustration. I blocked Melanie on all social media platforms, not wanting to see any more of her passive-aggressive posts, but the damage had already been done. Friends and acquaintances who had seen her posts were immediately asking questions, their tone tinged with thinly veiled condemnation. "You're not actually dating him for his money, are you?" One of them questioned me directly. "No," I snapped. "I'm not." But the stories lingered, and Melanie's shadow became larger than ever. No matter how hard I tried to get away, it felt like she was always one step ahead, ready to drag me down. After that horrible family meal, I knew I couldn't keep putting myself through Melanie's games. Every interaction with her seemed like a landmine about to detonate, and I was done falling into her traps. Zach and I talked about it, and we both agreed I needed to take a step back for my own sanity. I needed to set some boundaries, even if it meant missing family occasions. The first test came a few weeks later, when my parents said they would be having a cookout. "It'll be fun," my mother stated over the phone, her tone far too enthusiastic. "Jason and Melanie are coming, and you can bring Zach. We haven't seen you two in ages." I paused. "I don't think that's a good idea, Mom." She heaved an impatient sigh that made me feel like a troublesome child. "Oh, Lindsay, don't be like this. It's just a little barbecue. You're not still upset about what Melanie said, are you?" "Are you still upset?" I asked incredulously. "Mom, she basically accused me of being a gold digger in front of the whole family, and that's not even mentioning all the crap she's been posting online." Mom dismissed it with a giggle. "Oh honey, you know how Melanie is. She doesn't mean half of what she says. You two just need to talk things out." "No, Mom," I replied firmly. "What I need is for her to stop attacking me every chance she gets. Until that happens, I'm not going to any event where she's present." There was a prolonged pause. Finally, she remarked, "Well, I think you're overreacting, but if that's how you feel." It wasn't the answer I was hoping for, but she didn't go any further. Zach and I spent the weekend hiking instead, enjoying the solitude and quiet of the trails away from Melanie's toxic presence. But my absence was not unnoticed. A few days later, my father called, his tone pleasant but with that hint of disappointment I'd heard so many times before. "Lindsay, your mother told me you didn't come to the barbecue because of Melanie. Is that true?" "Yes, Dad," I said, bracing myself for the scolding I knew was coming. "Lindsay," he replied. "She's your sister. Families fight sometimes, but that doesn't mean you just walk away. Your mom and I raised you both better than that." I felt a knot form in my throat. "Dad, this isn't just a fight. This is years of Melanie tearing me down, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I have to protect myself." He exhaled. "I get that you're upset, but don't let this destroy the family. You two need to find a way to work things out." Destroy the family? The word struck me like a punch in the gut. It was the same guilt trip strategy my parents had used throughout my life to keep me in line, and I was sick of it. "I'm not the one destroying the family, Dad," I murmured, my voice trembling. "If you want to blame someone, blame Melanie." However, he did not. He never would. Over the next 2 months, I stuck to my decision. I denied any invitations from my parents to events attended by Melanie. "Let us know when you're hosting something without Melanie," I'd propose. They never did. Every time I turned them down, they'd say I was being harsh, Melanie was doing her best, and I was letting a minor misunderstanding destroy everything. What they didn't realize, or refused to recognize, was that this was not a misunderstanding. This was a pattern of conduct that had persisted throughout my life, and I was not going to continue submitting myself to it merely to keep the peace. The distance from my family was difficult, but it also allowed me to focus on myself. I immersed myself into my business, accepting new clients and developing my portfolio. Zach was my biggest supporter, always there to encourage me and remind me of my worth when I was doubting myself. Slowly but steadily, I began to feel like I was reclaiming my identity. Lindsay, the artist, the partner, the woman who did not want her family's approval to be complete. Melanie, on the other hand, was not satisfied with the status quo. One afternoon, my dearest friend Emily called me. "Hey, have you seen Melanie's latest post?" she inquired, her tone tinged with alarm. "No," I replied, my stomach sinking. "What did she do now?" Emily hesitated. "She posted this picture from your parents' anniversary dinner, and the caption said, 'Some of us actually show up for our family. Watch ya, family first.'" I groaned. Unbelievable. She can't stand that I'm not playing her game anymore, so now she's trying to make me look like the bad guy. Emily sighed. "I know it's hard, but don't let her get to you. You're doing the right thing by setting boundaries." I wanted to believe her, but guilt was gnawing at me. Every time I saw a picture of my family without me, every time I heard my mother's disappointed tone or my father's angry sighs, I felt as if I had failed them. It didn't matter that I was defending myself. Part of me still craved their acceptance and validation. The breaking point occurred a few weeks later, when my parents asked Zach and me to supper. "It'll just be the four of us," Mom said. "No, Melanie, no drama." I reluctantly agreed. I wanted to believe they were finally listening to me and understanding where I was coming from. However, when we arrived, there was a fifth-place setting on the table. My heart fell. "Please tell me that's not for who I think it is," I requested. Before my mother could respond, the doorbell rang. Melanie strolled in moments later, smiling. "Oh, Lindsay, I didn't know you'd be here," she remarked, her tone full of feigned astonishment. I turned to my parents. "Are you serious? You lied to me." "Lindsay, please," Mom begged. "We just thought if you two spent some time together, you could work things out." I shook my head, tears of fury and betrayal welling up in my eyes. "You don't get it, do you? I'm not the problem here." "She is." Melanie gasped and clutched her chest in mock indignation. "Me? What did I do?" I could not handle it anymore. "You know exactly what you did, Melanie. You've spent our entire lives tearing me down, and I'm done pretending it's okay. I'm done being your punching bag." She smirked. "Oh, please. You're so sensitive, Lindsay. Maybe if you stopped playing the victim all the time, people would actually take you seriously." That was it. I grasped Zach's hand and turned to face my parents. "If you can't respect my boundaries, then I can't be part of this family anymore." My mother started to cry. My father seemed to want to say something but didn't know what. Melanie simply stood there, looking as smug as ever. As we walked out, Zach squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing," he replied. I wanted to believe him, but all I could feel was grief. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, life was peaceful. Zach and I had discovered a rhythm together, a kind of sanctuary away from the drama that my family was continually causing. I was still separated from my parents and Melanie, but I felt no remorse. I'd spent too much of my life bending over backwards to please them. I was now focused on my own happiness. When Zach proposed, their happiness increased tenfold. We were on vacation and stayed at a beautiful home on a remote island. It was the kind of paradise I could only imagine: pristine beaches, lush foliage, and a villa straight out of a tourist brochure. Zach planned the entire vacation as a surprise for our 2-year anniversary. He urged me to pack my luggage but didn't tell where we were going, just that it would be exceptional. The proposal took place on the second night, following a romantic dinner on the balcony facing the ocean. As the sun sank, the sky turned orange and purple, and the sound of waves breaking against the shore provided the ideal backdrop. I was savoring the scenery when Zach abruptly dropped to one knee, clutching a little velvet box in his palm. "Lindsay," he replied, his voice steady but full of passion. "The last 2 years with you have been the happiest of my life. You have shown me what it means to truly love and be loved. I hope to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" I was so overwhelmed that I could barely speak. As I nodded, tears flowed down my cheeks, and my heart felt like it was about to burst with excitement. "Yes," I eventually managed to say. "Yes, of course, I'll marry you." The ring was stunning, a basic yet elegant design featuring a single diamond that glittered like the stars above us. It wasn't gaudy or over the top, and I appreciated that Zach had chosen something so perfect for me. We spent the remainder of the evening partying, sipping champagne beneath the stars, and fantasizing about our future together. For once, I felt like my life was mine, not defined by my family's expectations or Melanie's shadow, but by the love and pleasure I'd created with Zach. When we returned from our trip, we began arranging the wedding. Neither of us wanted anything large or ostentatious. We both preferred closeness over show. We settled on a small ceremony with only 25 guests, close friends and family members who had been supportive of our relationship since the beginning. Melanie was clearly not on the guest list. My parents' invitation required a more hard decision. I struggled with it for weeks, divided between wanting them to be there and fearing the drama they may cause. Finally, I decided to accept them, but I made it clear that if they brought Melanie as a guest, they would be instantly uninvited. "This is my day," I informed them honestly. "I'm not going to let her ruin it." The site was ideal, a quaint winery secluded in the countryside, with rolling hills and scenic views. The wedding would be held in an outside garden, followed by dinner and dancing beneath a canopy of fairy lights. Zach and I collaborated closely with Amanda, a wedding planner who helped us bring our vision to life. She was a godsend, keeping things on track and making sure no details were neglected. Of course, Melanie learned about the wedding. I'm still unsure how. My parents said they didn't tell her, but I wouldn't put it past them to accidentally reveal it. Once she knew, the sabotage began. It all started with rumors. Melanie called up extended family members who hadn't been invited, explaining that I had purposefully excluded them because I thought I was too good for the family. She informed one cousin that the wedding was being held at a fancy, costly vineyard and that I was wasting Zach's money like it was going out of style. "She's always been jealous of me," Melanie allegedly stated. "This whole wedding is just her way of trying to one-up me." I learned about the rumors from my Aunt Karen, who contacted me one evening, apparently disturbed. "Is it true, Lindsay, that you are not inviting anyone from your family except then your parents?" she asked. "Aunt Karen, that's not true," I exclaimed, my wrath boiling over. "We are having a simple wedding, that is all. It's not about excluding somebody. It's about maintaining intimacy." "Well, Melanie's been saying some things," she admitted. "I just thought you should know." I thanked her for the heads up and hung up, my hands quivering in anger. Zach spotted me pacing the living room and grumbling under my breath. "She's unbelievable," I complained. "She's spreading lies about me to the entire family just because I didn't invite her to my wedding." Zach wrapped his arms around me, his calm presence grounding me. "Let her say whatever she wants," he muttered. "The individuals that matter understand the truth. Do not let her steal your joy." He was correct, of course, but it didn't make things any easier. Melanie's rumors sparked a chain reaction, and I soon found myself getting calls and messages from distant relatives demanding to know why they hadn't been invited. It was exhausting, but I wouldn't let it impede my plans. When the wedding day arrived, I was a bundle of jitters. Not because of Melanie. Amanda had informed me that the venue had strict security measures in place and that no unauthorized guests would be admitted, but because I wanted everything to be flawless. As I stood in the bridal suite, looking in the mirror, I felt a sense of peace come over me. My gown was simple but lovely, a flowing A-line with delicate lace embellishments and a soft champagne color. My dearest friend Emily stood alongside me, smiling as she adjusted my veil. "You look incredible," she replied. "Zach's going to lose it when he sees you." The ceremony was all I had imagined it would be. As I came down the aisle, my heart leaped when I saw Zach waiting for me, his eyes full of love and pride. We exchanged meaningful and highly personal vows, and when we said "I do," there wasn't a dry eye in the yard. The reception was equally as wonderful. The meal was exquisite, the wine flowed freely, and the dance floor was filled with laughing and happiness. My parents behaved appropriately, though I could sense my mother was uncomfortable without Melanie. Still, for once, the spotlight was on me. Not on family conflict or sibling rivalry, but on the love Zach and I shared. As the night came to a close, I found myself sitting with Emily and a few other close friends, reminiscing on everything that had led up to this point. "You did it," Emily remarked, raising her glass in toast. "You stuck up for yourself and achieved pleasure. That is what matters." Following the wedding, Zach and I hoped Melanie would finally leave us alone. But of course, that was too much to ask. Instead, her toxic behavior worsened. She began spreading even more ridiculous accusations, not only about me but also about Zach. According to Melanie, Zach had a history of dominating his partners, had been sued for fraud in the past, and was using his fortune to influence me into separating from my family. Of course, it was all falsehoods, but the sheer arrogance of it was terrible. The worst aspect was that her lies began to damage Zach's professional reputation. One of his business associates, Mark, called him to inquire about the lawsuit. At first, Zach was perplexed. But when Mark mentioned that he had learned about it through a mutual acquaintance, it was evident that Melanie was the source. This was the last straw for Zach. He was not the kind to exacerbate situations unnecessarily, but this wasn't simply petty family drama anymore. It was defamation, and it was beginning to harm his livelihood. Zach decided to pursue legal action. He contacted his lawyer, Andrea, a no-nonsense woman who had handled his business contracts for many years. Andrea acted quickly when Zach explained the problem. "We'll draft a cease and desist letter immediately," she told me. "If she doesn't comply, we'll escalate to a defamation lawsuit." The letter was mailed a few days later. I hadn't seen it, but Zach assured me that it was clear and left no room for interpretation. It detailed all of Melanie's fraudulent assertions, requested that she stop making defamatory statements immediately, and warned that failing to comply would result in legal action. Zach's tone when discussing it was calm but forceful. "This isn't just about us, Lindsay," he told me. "People like Melanie won't stop unless forced to. She needs to learn that her actions have repercussions." Melanie did not take it well, as one could expect. The day after she received the letter, she called my mother in tears, accusing Zach of bullying her and attempting to destroy her life. My mother, of course, called me right away, her voice filled with guilt-tripping concern. "Lindsay, what is happening? Melanie claims Zach is threatening her with a lawsuit. Isn't that a little extreme?" "She's lying, Mom," I responded, attempting to remain cool. "Zach's not threatening her. He's urging her to stop telling lies about us. She, not him, is ruining people's lives here. But she's your sister, my mother explained, as if that justified everything. Can't you two talk it out? No, Mom, I snapped. We tried that, and it obviously didn't work. This is more than simply family conflict, she's breaking the law. If you don't comprehend that, perhaps you're part of the problem. Mom didn't say much after that, but I knew she still supported Melanie. It stung, but by this stage, I was used to it. Melanie's life began to fall apart as the legal pressure increased. Her toxic behavior had alienated many of her friends over the years, and this current incident appeared to be the last straw for a few of them. I heard through the grapevine that numerous people had cut ties with her because they were tired of the continual manipulation and drama she introduced into their lives. Sarah, one of her closest friends, reached out to me. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for ever believing Melanie's lies, Sarah told me. She's been saying nasty things about you and Zach for years, but now I realize it's all envy. She's toxic, and I can't be around her any longer. It was reassuring to hear, but also heartbreaking. Melanie had always been surrounded by people who adored her, yet her actions had caused her to lose many relationships. Now those bridges were crumbling one by one. She was also struggling financially. Jason, her husband, had lately lost his job, and without it, they were struggling to keep up their extravagant lifestyle. Melanie refused to downsize, claiming they could wait it out, but debts were piling up. Credit card debt, house bills, and the expenditures of living the fashionable lifestyle were catching up with her. Eventually, everything came crumbling down. Jason petitioned for divorce, alleging irreconcilable differences. According to what I heard, he had gotten tired of her continual desire for attention and refusal to accept responsibility for her actions. Melanie's situation deteriorated much further after her divorce. She lost her house and most of her belongings and was forced to move in with my parents. I wish I could feel sorry for her, but I don't. Melanie had spent her entire life putting others down in order to boost her own status, and now she was reaping the benefits. Even yet, it was difficult not to feel some residual anger when I heard my mother discuss assisting Melanie in getting back on her feet. She's going through a tough time, Mom said one day during one of our few phone calls. We're just trying to be there for her. Of course you are, I replied, unable to hide my contempt. Hasn't she always been your priority? That's not fair, Lindsay, Mom exclaimed, protective as usual. She is your sister. Don't you worry about what happens to her? No, Mom, I replied simply. I care about what happens to me and Zach, and I'm not going to let her drag us down with her. It was a harsh statement, but it was true. I'd spent far too much of my life thinking about Melanie, about how to deal with her drama and how to convince my parents of the harm she was creating. I was now focused on defending myself and the life I had created with Zach. Melanie appeared to fade away from my radar over time. The legal letter had worked. She ceased spreading lies about us, and we were finally at peace. Zach and I immersed ourselves into our profession and our relationship, creating a life founded on love and mutual respect. My relationship with my parents remained tense, but I had come to realize that certain things would never change. Every now and again, I received updates about Melanie from family members. She was still living with my parents and struggling to reconstruct her life. Part of me wondered if she'd learned anything from this, but I doubted it. Melanie is the type of person who rarely changes. Finally, I understood I didn't need her to provide me with closure. I didn't require an apology or recognition of the grief she had inflicted. What I needed to do was move forward, leave the past behind, and concentrate on the future. And this is exactly what I did. It took years, literally years, for my parents to understand what I had been attempting to tell them throughout my life. For as long as I could remember, they had overlooked, justified, and even glorified Melanie's behavior, regardless of how toxic or harmful it was. However, as the consequences of her acts became apparent, they were unable to ignore the reality any longer. I initially noticed the shift when on the phone with my father. Melanie had returned to live with them months before, and I had kept my distance. My parents periodically tried to contact me, but our chats were difficult. This time, however, my father sounded different. Tired and worn out in a way I had never heard before. "How are you doing, Lindsay?" he inquired, his tone surprisingly mild. "I feel like we haven't really talked in a while." "I'm fine, Dad," I replied cautiously. "Busy with work, you know." There was a gap before he sighed. I wanted to say I'm sorry." The words took me off guard. "I'm sorry for what?" "For everything," he said. "For not listening to you and not noticing what Melanie was doing. Your mom and I have discussed how badly we have let you down." I wasn't sure what to say. For years, I had imagined hearing those words, my parents finally admitting the pain they had caused by continuously side with Melanie. But now that the moment had arrived, it seemed strange. "Dad," I asked softly, "what brought this on?" "Melanie," he acknowledged. "Getting her back in the house has been eye-opening, to say the least. The way she speaks to your mother, the way she blames everyone else for her problems, it is tiresome. It has made us realize that we have allowed her to get away with far too much for far too long. Part of me wanted to be vindicated, but largely I felt tired." "I appreciate the apology," I responded. "But it doesn't change what happened." "I know," he replied swiftly. "I do not expect it to. I just wanted you to know that we see it now, and we apologize." A few days later, my mother called. She was never as forthright as my father, but her message was consistent. "We didn't do right by you, Lindsay," she admitted, her voice thick with sorrow. "We ignored Melanie's behavior because it was simpler than confronting it, and as a result, we damaged you. I'm very sorry." Hearing their comments was a step forward, but it did not alleviate years of sorrow. I told them so. "I need time," I explained. "This isn't something I can just forgive overnight." They appeared to understand, and for the first time, they didn't try to force me to move quicker than I was willing to. Not long after, I received a letter. It came from Melanie. Seeing her handwriting on the envelope filled me with dread. I hesitated whether or not to open it, but my curiosity won out. The letter was long, many pages of carefully written text, and as I read it, I couldn't help but feel a range of emotions. Melanie apologized for everything, the lies, the manipulation, and the years spent undermining and making me feel tiny. She stated that envy drove most of her actions, but she did not go into detail about what she was envious of. She apologized for spreading stories about Zach, causing tension at family events, and capitalizing on years of favoritism. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can't undo," she wrote, "but I want you to know that I sincerely apologize. I've done a lot of reflecting, and I realize how toxic I've been, not only to you, but to everyone around me. I don't expect you to forgive me, but maybe someday we can start over." Reading her remarks, I felt a glimpse of something I couldn't quite place, perhaps relief, or maybe optimism. But, overall, I felt cautious. Melanie's past behavior had taught me not to take her comments at their value. A single letter, no matter how passionate, was insufficient to repair the damage she had done. I showed Zach the letter that evening, and we discussed it during supper. "Do you believe she means it?" I asked. He thought for a moment. "Maybe. But even if she does, you don't have to accept her back into your life." "I know," I replied. "I just don't want to make the wrong decision. If she is serious, perhaps I should give her a chance." "Giving her a chance doesn't mean jumping back into the relationship as if nothing happened," Zach told me. "You can take it slow, set boundaries, protect yourself." He was correct, of course. If I was going to look into the prospect of restoring a relationship with Melanie, it had to be on my terms. For the following 2 weeks, I tucked the letter away in a drawer, reviewing it sometimes but without answering. I was not prepared, and I did not want to rush into anything. Meanwhile, my parents continued to work on repairing our relationship. They called on a frequent basis, not to guilt or pressure me, but to simply check in. It was a minor but significant difference, and I appreciated it more than I let on. Melanie had recently begun visiting a therapist, according to my mother. "I think she's really trying to change," she told me. "She's been talking about all the things she wants to do differently, how she wants to make amends." "That's good," I remarked warily. "But I'm still not ready." "I understand," Mom murmured, and for once, she appeared to mean it. Months passed, and I began to experience a feeling of closure, not because I had forgiven Melanie or repaired our relationship, but because I was finally enjoying life on my own terms. I was doing well in my career, my relationship with Zach was better than ever, and I had surrounded myself with people who genuinely cared about me. My connection with my parents was gradually improving, and while not ideal, it was a step in the right way. I eventually decided to write Melanie back. My letter was brief and to the point. I thanked her for her apology and acknowledged her efforts, but I made it clear that I required time and distance. "If we're ever going to rebuild our relationship," I declared, "it has to be on new terms. Terms that respect my boundaries and my well-being." I had no idea how she would react, and honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for her approval or attempting to please her. I was living for myself, which felt liberated. In the end, I recognized that forgiveness isn't about condoning someone's behavior or pretending the damage never occurred. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of that pain and choosing to move forward in a way that preserves your serenity, which is exactly what I plan to do. Life has a tendency of shocking you when you're least expecting it. After years of struggling with my own issues, dealing with family dysfunction, and questioning my worth, I suddenly found myself in a position where everything was fitting into place. Not because life had suddenly become flawless, but because I had stopped striving to meet everyone else's expectations. Professionally, my graphic design career was flourishing. Over the years, I developed a strong portfolio and received praise for my work. The true turning point came when I entered an industry competition with a campaign I produced for a sustainable fashion firm. I had thrown my heart and energy into that project, creating a visual identity that reflected the brand's essence while also pushing the boundaries of what was considered traditional design. When I received an email alerting me that I had won the coveted International Design Excellence Award, I couldn't believe it. At first, I assumed it was an error. I must have read the email a dozen times before it sank in. Winning that prize was more than just a recognition of my abilities. It reminded me that I could achieve greatness on my own terms. The ceremony was held in New York City, and Zach insisted on accompanying me. "This is your moment," he stated proudly. I wouldn't miss it for the world. The event was a whirlwind. I strolled into the large ballroom, feeling both nervous and delighted, surrounded by some of the most prominent personalities in the design industry. When my name was called and I walked up to the stage to receive the prize, the cheering was thunderous. I delivered a brief statement thanking those who had helped me along the way and dedicated the award to the mentors who had pushed me to pursue my goal. Following the ceremony, numerous industry executives approached me, including Isabelle Marchand, creative director of a large advertising agency. She said my art was refreshing and bold, and she wanted to collaborate on a new project. That conversation marked the start of a professional connection that would lead to innumerable opportunities for me in the years ahead. Winning the award also spurred me to launch an initiative I had been planning for years. A mentorship program for budding designers. I termed it Creative Futures. The purpose was straightforward: to give information, guidance, and chances for budding designers who didn't have typical entry points into the business. Setting up the application was no easy task. I collaborated with local design schools and industry professionals to secure money through a variety of grants and sponsorships. Zach, my ever-supportive boyfriend, offered to help with the business side of things, connecting me with potential sponsors through his own network. By the time the program began, we had a roster of excellent mentors and a group of bright, hungry students ready to make an impact on the world. The first year of the program was a huge success. One of our mentees, a young woman named Tasha, went on to secure an internship at a renowned design firm, and several others earned scholarships to further their education. Seeing their progress and excitement reminded me why I fell in love with design in the first place. While I was busy developing Creative Futures, Zach was making waves in his own career. His technology company had developed from a modest, scrappy startup to an industry leader. After years of steady growth, Zach decided to expand internationally, establishing offices in London, Tokyo, Sydney, and Berlin. The expansion was a massive undertaking. Zach spent months traveling between locations, engaging with local teams and supervising the establishment of each new office. It was difficult work, but he relished the challenge. "I've always wanted to take this company global," he told me one night during dinner. "And now it's actually occurring. It feels surreal." Despite his tight schedule, Zach always found time for us. Whether it was setting aside an hour for a peaceful supper at home or surprising me with a weekend getaway, he never let work come between us. His ability to strike a balance between ambition and love was one of many reasons I respected him. As our professions progressed, we began to consider what we wanted our lives to be like in the years ahead. We both enjoyed the vitality of the city, but we also desired a retreat, somewhere we could unwind and recharge away from the hustle and bustle. That is how we ended up purchasing the Lake Cottage. Originally, Zach came up with the idea. He had been looking through real estate ads one evening when he came upon the property, a large mansion on the banks of Lake Tahoe. The house itself was spectacular, with floor-to-ceiling windows providing breathtaking views of the sea, a large terrace ideal for holding events, and a private dock for boating and kayaking. "Take a look at this," Zach replied, sliding his laptop across the table. "I think we should go see it." I scrolled through the photographs, my heart skipping a beat. "It's beautiful," I said. "Do we really need a facility like this?" "It's not about need," Zach said with a smile. "It's about creating an environment in which we can unwind and enjoy life. We've worked hard, Lindsay. I believe we deserve this." A few weeks later, we flew to Tahoe to tour the property. The instant we stepped inside, I knew it was the one. The house felt like a dream come true, luxurious but intimate, with every detail carefully planned. By the time we departed, we'd made an offer. Having the lake house felt like the pinnacle of everything we'd worked toward. We spent our weekends there, having friends for barbecues on the deck, taking long walks down the beach, and relaxing by the fire pit beneath the stars. It became our haven, a spot where we could unwind from the stresses of our hectic lives and simply enjoy each other's company. Looking back on everything we'd done, I couldn't help but be grateful, not only for our achievement, but also for the path that had led us here. The difficulties we had encountered, the lessons we had learned, and the love that sustained us through it all. I knew there were more chapters to our narrative to be written, but for now, I was pleased. Life was not ideal, but it was ours, which was more than enough.
Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.